Man, I haven't talked about Empanada in forever. He put out this video not too long ago. I was kind of saving it to react to it. The first world left will never matter again. The hard truth you need to hear. And I'm not going to lie, I did, look at it already a little bit. Let's hear it from the man himself.
What advice would I give to a leftist in the first world to organize in their countries? Go to the third world and organize there instead. You're not going to build shit in the first world. People there are too material.
So basically the argument of the video is if you want to make a change in the world, if you're a leftist and you live in the United States, or he's specifically going to be talking about America, but I guess the entirety of the first world is you should move to a nation in the periphery, a third world country, whatever you want to call it. And this is his take.
Really invested in maintaining their comparative advantage with the third world. So it's not going to happen. I would hope the last 10 years, especially of American politics and UK politics, etc., would have made that very obvious to anyone. When you come to the...
I want to hear him give some examples or something before we get into it, but I wholeheartedly disagree.
Third world. You also need to let...
I love the I'm consuming thing when you get super chats. That's so good.
The people who live there just blatantly exploit you. Like when a taxi driver charges you double, you can't say anything. That's the rule. I mean, you can't build a...
that's facts. I don't know if that makes me a third worldist, but if you're a first worlder and you're getting charged double for something when you're visiting a foreign country, can't say shit, man. You better pay that. Offer to pay triple because you're making 10 times the wages they are.
Left in these countries where the very notion of building a left doesn't work because people who pretend to be leftists tell you that building a left shouldn't happen because there's always this ever-present threat of liberals versus conservatives. So you can never build anything better than the liberals. You have to always vote for the liberals. Building anything aside, building an alternative movement according to them is sacrilege. When you live in that environment where you're not allowed to build anything better, you can't build anything better. You're just one person. How the fuck are you going to shout down a bunch of federal government funded people who try to funnel any radical sentiment into the centrist wing of the Democratic Party? You saw this with the...
So he's talking about electoral politics, right? Let's let him keep going.
Recent election, everyone saw it. What happened? All these people who said they're just reluctantly voting for Biden, I think it's, you should have voted for Biden, obviously. But it turned out they weren't actually reluctantly voting for him. They were just using that as a rhetorical tool to get others to vote for him. Because once...
Bro, who's he talking about, bro? Not me. I said I made a video that you shouldn't vote for Joe Biden. I'm not sure if I still agree with that, but...
He was in power. Now they're ignoring everything that he's doing. Where are the videos from these supposed leftists who were just reluctantly supporting Biden on him busting the rail strike, on the train derailment in East Palestine and his awful response to it, on him bailing out massive banks? Where are they? Not just banks either, insuring deposits above $250,000. People who have deposits above $250,000 are rich as fuck, Where's the videos about that, about how it was bad for him to do that, denouncing him for it? They don't exist. Where's the videos about Biden approving a...
So he's talking about videos. I feel like he's just talking about leftist content creators, to be honest. And yeah, Biden is trash. And the leftist content, creator sphere is incredibly liberal. I mean, even calling it leftist is kind of ridiculous. But what does that have to do with the first world left? That's just content creators. That's just the online shit. That shit doesn't matter.
Massive oil drilling project on native land. They don't exist. Now, I haven't made videos on most of these things either, but it's because I'm not American, okay? I don't focus on US domestic politics. Most of these people, half of their content is denouncing US geopolitical enemies. The other half is telling you how the Republicans are bad. There's pretty much never any criticism of Biden. When there is, it's framed as he's on their side. He's just sort of misguided, rather than them actually being opposed to him fundamentally. And it's also very, very infrequent. So just, for example, searching for strike on Vosh's channel, we have...
he's talking about... Oh my goodness. He just made this video to talk about Vosh. Vosh, whatever, he's a lib. But what does this have to do with the first world left, bro? Get to the point. Okay, I'm gonna skip. Yeah, that's cringe. Dark Brandon makes the trains run on time, standing Joe Biden. Get the fuck out of here, Vosh. I agree with about Empanada, but what does that have to do with regular leftists here,
imperialism, they are completely in sync. When it comes to imperialism, they don't just ignore what's going on. They outright deep throat and support the awful things that the US government does. So it's even worse on imperialism. So when you live in a country like the US where your best hope is basically to have some class collaborationist unions who are a bit stronger in order to increase you and a limited stratum of the population's own working conditions without really being able to do much to actually stop imperialism, to
Let's run that back. Let me hear that again.
have some class collaborationist unions who are a bit stronger in order to increase you and a limited stratum of the population's own working conditions without really being able to do much to actually stop imperialism, to really meaningfully do anything for the rest of the world, because people like that frame themselves as leftists and dominate the discussion of what a leftist in your country is and shout down anyone who dares try and build anything better. How are you supposed to do anything?
Bro, goddamn. That was a long ass point. I was like, I'm gonna let him finish this point, but that kind of went on for a while. But it's a salient point. He's making the argument that the best we can do is slight reformism that betters the working conditions for a small group of people here in the United States domestically. But the real kahuna here is imperialism. I mean, I can see where he's coming from, right? Because I live right by the border. Mexico's right there. I cross super often, and yeah, just the literally the border delineates areas that are it's not like you're living in freaking Beverly Hills right across the border, but there's a level of minimum wealth that just isn't there in Mexico. You go to TJ, it's a different world. There's a level of prosperity here that I feel like keeps people very sleeping, People they're not woke. They're not woke. I don't know if that's the correct way to say it, but I can see what he's trying to say. But I do think I'm convincing myself while I'm thinking to support his point. There was a few things I did want to bring up. So America is so incredibly unequal that the poorest Americans are genuinely living sometimes in third world like conditions. Let me see if I can find the statistic. I think it was Brookings. Yeah, the US is living millions behind. American exceptionalism needs to change by 2030. There's shit like survival analysis showing that black men in Harlem were less likely to reach the age of 65 than men in Bangladesh. There's a lot of stuff specifically for black people, indigenous people, Latinos, immigrants. That life here in the United States is better, We make, I don't know how many times the wages of people in other countries, but life is also way more expensive, Things are different, things are better, but they're not that much better. Editor Daniel here. Things are better, but they're not so much different that it's qualitatively different, that it's an entirely different struggle here than anywhere else. I don't think that's true. And when you start getting into there was another statistic that I read here. Yeah, 22% of its residents rely on food stamps for food security. That's a quarter of the fucking country. A quarter of children live below the poverty line. Millions lack access to clean drinking water. There's a lot of shit, a lot of inequality, and in absolute terms, it's still better than imperialized countries, but it's there. That suffering is there.
Meaningfully do anything for the rest of the world because people
So to frame that because we can't do anything for the rest of the world, nothing we do really matters, isn't really fair, right? I don't think that's very fair at all to the people that are here. Clowning on Americans is fun, it's funny, but let's be honest, there is still a lot of suffering in this country. So that's point number one. Obviously, Empanada moved himself from Australia to, I don't know if it's Chile or Argentina, but he did this. He's advocating to do what he did. I don't know if his move was politically motivated in the way he's elaborating here, but, he did what he's preaching here. And props to him, But, yes, the issue of imperialism and the American left is important. It's salient. What he's saying is true. There's a lot of class collaborationism here in the United States, and a lot of people are willing to support, wars of imperialism. They might not know that it's specifically because it benefits them, but that's there. It's true. I don't think abandoning the United States and conceding the ground to reactionaries is a solution, especially not if you're going to be moving to a third world country. And I'm not saying Bad Empanada did this, but if first worlders move in mass to the third world, And I know I'm not using the proper words. He's using that language. I'm gonna use it. What's gonna happen? I mean, that's gentrification, right? Like, there was literally a bunch of people in like the city of Mexico saying Americans do not fucking come here. Like, stay in your goddamn country. You're making rents go up. You're making everything super expensive. I don't think that's what Empanada is arguing for, but inevitably, gentrification is what would happen if people moved to other countries like this. And I personally, I wouldn't do it. I've stayed in this same like geographic area for a lot of my life. I think most Americans do. Most Americans don't leave like in 100-mile radius. Let's look it up. I can't really find the statistic, but there's a genuine, lack of travel for a lot of people. People feel emotionally connected to the communities and the spaces they're around. And I definitely feel that here, like the people of the city, I live in San Diego. These are my people, to abandon them, to not fight for them. I wouldn't be able to do that at all. I looked this up. I saw a funny post that, oh yeah. So somebody comment on the Deprogram Reddit. They're like, sus. He's like 2 steps away from just telling us to straight up not do anything at all. I mean, I'm not saying he's a fed, like absolutely not. But I just thought that was funny because I mean, that is kind of the takeaway, right? It's hopeless. You're never going to be able to build a movement. Either leave and abandon the country and go build a movement somewhere else. Or, I mean, the alternative, right? Just do that simple class collaborationist reformism that won't really accomplish anything.
That frame themselves as leftists and dominate the discussion of what a leftist in your country is and shout.
That's just the online left, though. I feel like, okay, it's impossible to know how powerful, like, offline leftist groups are. They're not as powerful as they need to be. They're not as powerful as they should be. But he's kind of hyper-focusing on the online left,
Down anyone who dares try and build anything better. How are you supposed to do anything? What can you do? I really don't think there is much. It's been 7 years now since the whole Bernie 2015, 2016 thing. That was a potentially radicalizing moment, and it all was just channeled into supporting the Democratic Party. In the end, the centrist Democratic.
I mean, not all. You have big parties like the DSA. We have 2-3 openly socialist people in the Senate, right? Like Ocasio-Cortez. Who's the other one? I know it's Bernie Sanders and this other lady. And I mean, these aren't like fucking Marxist communists, but there's energy there. There's energy there.
Democratic Party in the end, nothing came of it. It was not used as like a learning moment to build an alternative movement that can gradually be built like on the state level, on the local level to...
I mean, it had... I'm not a part of DSA. I was a part of PSL for like a minute. But not DSA. Membership. Claims over 85,000 members. The 2021 convention claims 94K members. I mean, there's been... But I mean, this shit takes time. It's not like Trump got elected, there was a Bernie Sanders thing, and then people just start taking over the White House, Like, that shit takes time. How long did the like alt-right take to build up to what they were, to their storming the Capitol, It's gonna take it takes a long time to build movements.
To eventually become something that could potentially unseat the Democratic Party on a national level, as has been done throughout Latin America and many other countries.
I mean, that should definitely be the goal, though. That should definitely be the goal. In that you build up a base so powerful that you can be a threat to the Democratic Party.
In the world, it was used to simply channel all of that energy into supporting Joe Biden. And this was very intentional from the people who advocated for that. And as I just went over, you can see precisely how it is intentional. Because they have...
Bro, he's just talking about Bosch. This video title is such a fucking, like, tease. Because that's not what this video is about.
Just looped right around to defending Biden. He's done a lot of terrible shit, and they've done nothing to even draw any attention to it. So yeah, that's how it is. And if it's that bad domestically, imagine how much worse they are internationally. They are completely supportive of American imperialism when it comes to the international sphere. Like, what can you do if you're in the first world? I mean, you can try to educate other people in the first world about how that is bad, but how do you compete with this massive, let's be honest, at this point some of it is probably Fed-funded propaganda apparatus trying to defang radical energy and channel it into supporting centrist Democrats in order to uphold the neoliberal status quo? What can you do about that?
I've always said the best way to get over skepticism of socialism, to educate people, is to quite literally do the work, hit the streets, whether it be not in like rallies or strikes or protests or anything, which I don't think are that effective in terms of building a base, right? It's the difficult stuff, direct aid, feeding people, giving out supplies, doing visible stuff outside where, direct aid is like kind of like selfless work. You spend money and you're basically burning money, not burning money. You're Mr. Beasting, you're giving it away. There is no return on that. And people see that shit and they see you waving a red flag. Even if they disagree with you, they're going to understand that you're about it. You're about the what you believe in. I think that's how you get support. It's not a million fucking video essays don't matter if people don't see you and your people out there doing shit. I've always believed that. And I don't think there's that many organizations doing that. Or at least not that many organizations doing that, also with the political platform building up to what Empanada is arguing for, which he argues correctly, that the goal should ultimately be, taking power, being a threat to the establishment. And a lot of groups aren't doing that. They either do the direct aid or they do the political stuff. Very few mix that together. That's why the Black Panthers were so successful, But we don't really got that right now. At least not to that same level that the Black Panthers were. But it'll come. I think it'll come, 100%.
They're much stronger than you. They're much better funded than you will ever be. They have institutional support. There's obviously a much bigger audience for it. How do you just compete with that? You can't. So if you want my honest opinion of the best thing for you to do on an individual level, it would probably be to move somewhere where you can fight that more directly, where you can fight imperialism more directly. Because imperialism is not going to be unseated by Americans in the first world who benefit from it. That much is very obvious. And the fact that even talking about that, even pointing that out, is framed by supposedly left Americans who call themselves to left and who police anyone further to left them than who advocates for anything more radical as a heinous, almost unimaginable wrong to even mention, is demonstrative of all of that. If all that happened of nationwide American BLM protests is vote for Biden, if all of that fizzled out so easily, I don't see how there is going to be a better revolutionary moment than that. None of it.
One, the BLM George Floyd uprisings, that only happened back in 2020. That was not even a full 3 years ago, right? That was the summer of 2020. That hasn't been that long ago, right? But that was just an explosion. It was an uprising. That was not a revolutionary moment. I think anyone who thought that was going to be a revolutionary moment is incredibly mistaken. Because there was what happened, right? The left was not prepared for this fucking absolute explosion in energy, and they weren't ready to capitalize on that moment. I can see where he's coming from, right? It is disappointing that you can have such a massive movement that leads absolutely nowhere. He's right, But I don't think we are where we were a few years ago. The public knowledge of socialism, it's a lot further than it's been before. Okay, yeah. More Americans disapprove of the controversial GOP tax reduction package than approve of it. 70% of Americans support single payer, whatever. Among young people, socialism is now more popular than capitalism. Americans are pretty fucking progressive, just in general. 59% and 72% of likely voters think Wall Street has too much power and influence. 78% of likely voters support stronger rules and enforcement on the financial industry. 65% of Americans think our economic system unfairly favors powerful interests. 59% of Americans and 43% of Republicans think corporations make too much profit. Which, talk about a fucking leftist dog whistle right there. Jesus Christ, bro. That's fucking surprising, honestly. I didn't know it was that high. When it comes to, obviously, the economy, inequality, Money in politics, taxes, yeah, like progressive taxation, the minimum wage, workers' rights, healthcare, education, climate change, gun safety, criminal justice, immigration, abortion and women's health, same-sex marriage. Americans are basically fucking fully fledged communists. That progress and support for socialism has only been popular because of the past few years, and while they haven't led to like a movement that's as powerful as it should be, that energy is still there. You know, it's bubbling, it's moving. Instead of people leaving the United States, going somewhere else and fucking off doing whatever, they need to be here and start putting in the fucking work. Go start knocking on doors, go print flyers, go hand out some fucking sandwiches, man. Go be doing shit. I can't say anything because I haven't done that in like a year. But I've been super fucking busy. In general, more people need to do that.
Came to literally anything at all. It was just easily co-opted by the centrist Democrats.
You got to peep the progress. You got to see. I mean, he's not American. I get it. And, you know, I'll admit, shit isn't where the movement isn't where it needs to be. But stuff is happening. That's all I got to say.